Welcome back. Welcome
Hey,
back.
I'm just filling in for Sarah. I did hear her on the last episode where she was taking my place.
Oh, yeah.
She didn't think I would listen, but I did.
She's like Ashley's worst nightmare.
I know, I heard.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
And welcome everybody to another awesome week of Case Files with Kat.
And Ashley.
And I'm so glad you're back.
Yes, me too.
So
Kind
did you? No, yeah, no. So you had a good trip?
Oh, it was great. I mean,
to
the
talk.
first part was, I don't think I've been back since I went to see my family, right? I wasn't here.
Yeah, no.
So my trip to see my family was really good. This is the first time my little niece was talking, so that was exciting. And then I came
How
back.
did she say your name? Did she say your name?
Yeah, she said Ashley.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was impressed. But it was a lot of fun. And then I came back, and then I went to Universal, and now I'm back. And I just don't want to be back.
She looks like she's tired.
I am tired. I've been trying to catch up on work, so
Yeah, good luck with that.
back to reality, unfortunately.
Back to life. So this is going to be part 3. Aren't you
Yes.
all so excited? Part 3 of the Roch Thériault and the Anthill Kids cult saga.
Yes.
I don't know how to say 3.
Yes, part 3.
Yeah, just I don't know how to say 3 in French. I said
Oh,
part
okay.
2 last time. Un, deux, trois. Part 3. That's
Sounds
horrible,
good to me.
horrible pronunciation. So lucky for you, you missed the first 2, but you did listen.
I did listen.
But unlucky for you, you are here for the worst of it.
Good, great. I'm
You are
excited. I'm here
serious.
for it.
You're such a bad liar. This is the worst of it.
I'm a changed person now that I'm back from
You're
out.
like, I am so cool. It's cool, whatever.
I'm like those cool rich people that take vacations. I'm just kidding.
I know. It's like 5 days. What? That's amazing.
Oh, God.
Okay, so you're all caught up.
I'm
You
all caught
listened.
up.
You listened, so I don't have to give too much of a recap. But we left off with Gabrielle, the nurse, and Roch's son Eleazar, being left outside because Roch hated him.
Right.
He cried. He was 5 months old. And I mentioned that the Children's Aid Society began watching the commune at that point when they called in for the baby to die. The baby had died. So they started watching them like hawks. That actually kind of started a year prior in 1984 after the group tried to apply for welfare, each of them individually. And they kind of caught on. They're like, well, aren't you all together? So that makes you an organization and not individual families. And so that became a whole thing. So people started to ask questions. So I'm going to back up just a bit to that point in the story. So they were denied welfare, but it didn't end there. The staff at the social services office had called the local Children's Aid Society because several of the women in the commune were expecting at that point. They were pregnant with Roch's child, and they needed to be checked in on because they had nothing where they were. They just had nothing. So on June 25th, 1984, social workers went to the commune unannounced, and they were treated like welcomed guests. There was a feast laid out for them, and everyone seemed to be working and happy and ha 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 ha. Just the women were in the kitchen or out in the fields, and everyone just seemed to be getting along. Roch was charming and gracious and manipulative, like all get out. Being like, hey, I'm so great. Look at all these wonderful things that we're doing here. And he bragged about being an author. He bragged about being just so wise and religious and pious or whatever. And so satisfied, the social workers returned to the office saying everything seemed fine. And they closed the file on them. So that was in June. But on October 5th, 1984, they started to change their minds because a cross-Canada bulletin went out And it came from the Quebec government's Welfare and Youth Protection Office. And it was saying, hey, we're looking for a group of people led by Roch Thériault and his followers. And it gave the history of the group in a pretty short synopsis, and that they just up and vanished from all of the things that they were trying to get away from in Quebec. So the Victoria County Social Services Agency quickly got on the phone with them. They're like, what? Wait, what's up? Who are these people? Okay, what's up with these people? And so they were told about Moses and how he had divided the commune's children between, the chosen children, the pure children, and the slaves. And in a reminder that Gabrielle had also said that there was the second-class citizens, those who worked, the second class of the commune were the ones that worked in the field, and then the upper class were the ones that worked in the house. Anyway, the local social services reopened the case, and soon there was this badass social worker named Georgia Brown. Yeah, go Georgia. And her colleague, Bob Gallipo.
Oh, that's a fancy name.
That's what it looks like to me. So they went out to the commune. So Georgia Brown saw immediately how docile and how submissive the women were. I think that that might have been a trigger for her, because she just sort of saw that they didn't speak unless they were spoken to, right? Like they dared not speak, and you could sort of see that she had maybe a little bit different viewpoint. I don't know if there was a history of abuse, or she understood what domestic violence looked like, or, that she sort of was seeing something different in them. She said that the group viewed him as the source of all knowledge. In fact, that was one of his titles. He said, this is his quote, "Life is like a stream. If you went into the stream where other people had walked, the water would be muddy and unclear. But if you went directly to the source of the stream, it would be pure and clean." So don't go to other people for information. Come only to me. Don't trust the media, society, or anything. I am the only one who's telling you the truth. And that is, that's Cult 101. Yeah. If you are the only person to be the deliverer of truth, that's not good.
So Georgia was not one of the original caseworkers that went out, right?
Not.
She was new, like new perspective. Okay.
New perspective. So she also discovered how much sexual control he had. He told her, again, his words, these are his words, "He has one legal wife, and the other women are my concubines. Oh my God. The other men are not allowed to have sexual relations." She asked him once if the oldest girl in the group, who was 8 or 9 at the time, would one day be his wife. And he said, "I hope so." And she said, "Well, when will that be?" And he just shrugged his shoulders and walked away.
So he really just thought he was untouchable. Because, who says that to a social worker, even if you're thinking it? You know what I mean? That's a whole nother
But this
level
also just brings me back to, I feel like the polygamists, it always comes back down to pedophilia.
Yeah.
Because you get older and the women get younger. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Right? Look at Warren Jeffs. Gross. And his dad. Grosser.
Yeah.
Ugh. So these visits go on like this for about a year or so. And these are the people who, I don't know if you remember when I said that they, the women got hooked up with blankets. They had the 2-way radio that Gabrielle was allowed to use to call for help for the baby. But it was like, we're going to ingratiate ourselves with this group of people so that they feel safe with us and, to gather information. But the more that they showed up offering things and offering help, they snooped. So they were also, it was like, help me, help you kind of a thing. But Roch started to feel pretty weary about them asking so many questions. And so he started you have to give me 2 days notice. And I'm like, yeah, nah, son. Good luck with that, you know?
Yeah.
And especially after baby Eliezer, I don't know how to say his name, Eleazar, sorry. After he died, the coroner said that he had died from sudden infant death syndrome. And despite all the evidence, despite Gabrielle saying how much Roch hated him and how he had the mark of the beast on him since one of his eyelids was slightly deformed, and despite her telling authorities that he had hit the child, the coroner said it was SIDS.
Wow.
Why? Because he was friends with Roch.
Actually.
Gabrielle felt that she was showing mercy on the child, but it's fucking horrific. And in an interview that I saw, that I rewatched one of the documentaries, she says, Gabrielle said she's truly believed that it was SIDS because she saw the doctor's paperwork. You're a fucking nurse. You put your 5-month-old infant out in the fucking snow and you think he died from sudden infant death syndrome? Like, that just doesn't... There's a break in logic at that point. And is she telling that to herself to feel better?
I feel like that's the only thing it could be. Because, like, surely if she was a nurse, she had to know what was going to happen when she did that.
And she had said that she felt she was showing mercy on the child because Roch didn't like him. She knew that.
By putting him outside?
And I think that when she says by showing him mercy to let him die.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like, why else do you say show him mercy?
Yeah. But there were I just feel like that's so inhumane.
It's inhumane as
to leave him out there just to freeze.
Horrific. Anyway, so the social worker Shiro, Georgia Brown, I hope, that's whatever. She was not letting up. She had a lot of pushback from her colleagues, actually. There was some people who were like, what? It's just this group of hippy dippy people living off the land, just kind of doing their own thing. They're all about God and whatever. And her boss, though, was not one of those naysayers. And so she was like, go, keep finding things. And so her boss actually found a nonprofit group in Toronto called COMA, C-O-M-A, Council on Mind Abuse. And it was run by Ian and Christine Howarth. Not Howarth. And so after they made sure that they weren't Scientologists, which I think is fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Let's not contact a cult about a cult, right? So after they figured out they weren't Scientologists, they called them up. And so they heard about the polygamy, the monitoring of the group members, the division of the children into slaves and the pure, the changing of the names to biblical ones, the isolation from family and society, Roch becoming Moses and the source of all information. Ian turned to his wife and literally said, Christine, I think we've got ourselves a cult. Like, no shit. I mean, you could give like 3 of those things. You know what I mean? But they were like, yep, we got a cult. So Georgia Brown and her boss were like, high five, boom. So they were they got a crash course on how cults work, the mind control, the manipulation, and how rarely cults like this end in a good way. Yeah. So they knew that they needed to act fast. Georgia Brown made the Aunt Hell Kids cult her number 1 priority from then on out. She knew there were 14 children, 2 more on the way, living on that commune, and she needed to protect them. Yeah. So Roch, however, didn't like the attention and started getting more and more paranoid. He stopped members from leaving the property. His punishments for small infractions got worse. He encouraged other members to tell on each other, to be like narcs on each other, sometimes letting the snitch take over and punishing the other member. Oh, wow. So they got to actually do the punishment, the beating, the whatever. Nicole and Chantal were the worst snitches. And to reward them, he would give them his leftovers at dinner while the rest of them starved. Yeah. So this meant you couldn't talk about wanting to leave. You couldn't badmouth. You couldn't say something. You couldn't complain about anything, or else you'd be told on. So the group love, the kumbaya, this hippy dippy, peace out, whatever. That was not even in existence anymore. They weren't thinking for themselves anymore. They were living in a constant state of fear and just trying to suck up to the person who could be nice to them. So snitches get stitches, right? You know what I'm saying? That didn't happen. Snitches were rewarded. That was awful. So Roch's treatment of the children was incredibly disturbing. Not what Georgia Brown could see, but she noticed how passive they were. You know my children. You know that they are not quiet people, right? They are children. They play, they laugh, they scream, they laugh too loud. You can hear them sometimes in the background. Like they're loud. And these children would sit at the table and just color. There was one child, she was 15 months old, got stung by a bee, and all he had to do was put his hand on her forehead for her to stop crying, and then she just stopped crying. The fear of a beating.
Yeah. In a 15-month-old.
In a 15-month-old. I've gotten bitten by a yellow jacket on my finger one, and I was just like crying because it was on my joint. I just had the COVID vaccine, so I was like hurting all over already, but like, oh my God. And this is a 15-month-old with no pain threshold, right? None of them laughed. None of them cried. None of them yelled, sang, played. They just sat still while they never got under your feet, you know, like if they're running around playing like kids do, like get out of the kitchen, I'm cooking. I don't
know if I missed this in the show. What age did they get separated into like slaves and like at what point, like when they were born? Like from the time they're born?
If someone came in like Maurice and Jacques, they had their own children. Those were immediately slaves.
Okay. So only his children.
Solange and Jacques got married and had their own child. That's a slave.
Got it. Okay.
If it wasn't from Roch, it was a slave.
Okay, got it.
They were a slave. Anyway, so they were like zombies, though. And so even if they weren't slaves, they were like zombies. Yeah. And that is just a clear sign of abuse at that point. So she just kept showing up. That was just her thing. You know, she just kept showing up. Anyway, so in 1985, Giselle in 1985, although she felt stuck, she decided to leave. She was pregnant again at this time, and she's left more than anybody. She's left and gone back. Her rate of return was just insane. She told her son, though, at that point, Jeremiah, about her plans to leave, and she would try to play a little game with him on how to keep the secret from Roch. But he told Roch, and Roch made him punish his mother and made him punch her in the face over and over and over again. She just cried and pleaded for him not to do that, but he kept doing it anyway. So these children were fucked up.
Yeah.
Jacques' wife, Maurice, was allowed to leave. She did beg Roch over and over and over again. He considered her a morale problem because she was never fucking happy there. Yeah. It just took her so long. She didn't want to leave her husband, but oh my gosh, how much he hurt her, cutting off her toe and shit. Like, I mean, just the things that they separated. She was left off to the side with her own children, and it was bad. So she begged and begged. She finally left. When she arrived at her parents' home, they were shocked by the way that she looked, and how her children behaved. One of them crawled on all fours and slept on the floor, all curled up in a ball like an animal. They both had those distended stomachs like you see in like those Ethiopia Save the Children commercials, you know. Did you ever see those? God,
Yeah,
there's a lot
awful.
back in the 80s and 90s. So after months of rehabilitation and working with a therapist specializing in like post-cult rehabilitation, she was ready to talk. And she started to spill the beans on Roch and her stories about the slave children and sometimes his own being used in sex games that involved group masturbation. When he was drunk, he threw kids in the lake or up against a tree, calling them devils. So on December 6th, 1985, Georgia Brown showed up at the compound with this huge ass warrant and took all of the children away.
Good for her.
And before they left, she told the women, you can leave. You can stay with your children, but you have to leave Roch. And none of them did. They all stayed. They just handed over the children. Not one of them cried or pleaded to have their children stay with them. They were not attached to them because Roch had severed those relationships with those children. They were not allowed to comfort their own children once they were born because that was in competition with their love for him.
Yeah.
So it was
fucking awful.
And then he beat them to shit. So like I can't imagine the amount of therapy these children needed to have later. Okay, I'm going to read. Sorry, I should have had this open. I'm going to read from the book, Savage Messiah. Roch admitted to Georgia Brown that his women, in quotes, had sexual relations on the site and that 2 of the children had observed them. He explained the genital organs with his wife, Giselle, when they were undressed in the kitchen. According to Georgia Brown, a boy told her that he saw 3 of his half-sisters playing with Roch Thériault's penis. They were pushing the skin of Roch's penis up and down. Georgia Brown describes a meeting with one of the girls on August 11th, 1986, when the girl confirmed that she slept with Pappy and that she liked being caressed, but she didn't like stroking, in quotes. Georgia Brown reports that during that interview of August 11th, while the girl was playing with the sexually explicit dolls, she said, Pappy likes me to pull on his penis and make white stuff come out of it. Everybody's doing it, including Mom. Mom and me took turns, and when white stuff came out, Pappy would get up. It is the court's view that children of that age who live in isolated areas would not be in a position to even imagine such behavior. Maurice Grenier states that Roch had no scruples about having one of the women masturbate Claude in front of the group members until he ejaculated. Maurice adds that Roch masturbated Claude in the presence of the others and that he organized naked wrestling matches among the women and between the women and Roch Jr.
So glad I came back for this.
I know. I told you it was the worst.
Ugh, it makes me
So,
sick to my stomach.
the stories continue. I mean, they fucking continue, and I won't tell them all, but the children would end up all telling similar stories as the other ones when they weren't together. They were now living in foster care, and the foster parents were like, holy shit, what happened to these kids? And they start all telling stories to their foster parents, and they're almost like not, yeah, so that happened. Like there's not it's
They
so
don't
matter of
realize
fact.
It's not normal.
It's just so matter of fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the evidence was mounting, but the court called for an independent review, and I'm doing this in air quotes, which turned out to just be a bunch of bullshit. The 3 people on the case, I'm not even going to say their names because they're just a bunch of bullshit. They all agreed that this was just a case of pioneering people being harassed by the authorities. They didn't even interview all of the children.
Oh my
They
God.
went to visit Roch and they just got swept up by his manipulations about how this was racist because they were against that they were francophones and that's all it was really about. And it was, and this whole idea of introducing sex to the children at too early an age was just maybe behind the times. Certainly, this is quote, certainly the children were permitted to have sexual activities among themselves, but the principles behind it weren't bad. Like what in the actual fuck?
These were like, like,
Yes.
wow.
All of them. Yeah. Social workers, psychologists, whatever. Like, these were just really hardworking, pioneering people.
Yeah.
So the judge in this case agreed with everybody who's probably listening to this podcast right now.
Oh, thank God. I thought you were about to say he agreed with that.
He agreed with us.
Holy shit.
And everybody else listening. And he didn't hold back in his decision. I'm not going to read it, but he was like, you guys are idiots. These people, having heard all that our listeners have and seen, since that what they've heard and what they have now seen, thought everyone was just misunderstanding Roch and his followers and making something out of nothing, and that the children should be returned to them. What? And 7 years after they were interviewed for this book, and after that, the lead woman was just like, yep, she stood by her report. Bonkers.
She stood by it?
I mean, Kevin should have been screaming this whole episode, but
yes, I just figured it would be like the whole episode.
I know,
like he would hear you. But
so,
like, I'm sorry. I just
Yeah.
cannot wrap
Yeah.
my head around
Yeah.
that a woman on top of everything else would just be like.
And it gets fucking worse, Ashley. That 7 years
He's just
after
so
this,
misunderstood.
7 years after this, after everything that comes out, she still stands by her damn report. Just bonkers. So on October 26, 1987, the judge ruled all children except Maurice's become wards of the crown. They were safe. So they go to foster care. Maurice gets her kids back except for one because they were so young. And then her older kids go with her. Now enters this crazy ass character by the name of Alex Joseph.
I can't believe how much crazier the story gets line by line.
I know. I know. So Alex Joseph, we'll get to him, but first we have to meet Dr. Jess Grossbeck. And Dr. Jess Grossbeck is a psychiatrist from Utah with a fascination for all things polygamy and shamanism. Those are two, natural healing, whatever.
Yeah.
And he came from a long line of polygamists, but his wife was not having that life. So he just had to look from afar and be jealous of polygamists. He was friends with a polygamist named Roy Potter. Roy Potter was incidentally like the one polygamist who actually tried to sue for his right to be a polygamist in Utah and tried to sue the state. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court wouldn't hear it. He lost his job, everything, but it didn't matter. He lost 2 of the 3 wives he had. So he just had one, and there we go. So he was a winner. So Potter meets Roch by way of Jess Grossbeck.
Okay.
But he was like, you only have 1 wife. And he was like, I have 8. And he's like, oh yeah, well I know someone who has 9. So
such bragging rights.
I know. So he gets him in front of Alex Joseph. Alex Joseph was a fellow polygamist with 9 wives. Bragging rights, So of course Roch already looked up to him. And he was, true story, the first libertarian mayor in the United States. Right. But where Roch controlled his women, Alex was with violence, all that. Alex was like the exact opposite. They lived independent lives. One was a lawyer. One was, an artist, I believe. One was like a city council person. Like they had this little town. It was his town. He created this town, and Bigwater, and they all had great lives. They would make appointments for sex when they wanted it, and they could say no.
See, I could kind of get down with that arrangement. Like, just leave me the fuck alone until I want sex, and then be on your merry way. Like, I was thinking about 8 husbands, and I was just going to shoot myself.
But if you were one of 8 wives,
and I just had to like show up occasionally, like I'm okay with that.
That's so funny. That's really funny. But I just like, Yeah, they just work together.
Yeah.
Hey, can we switch nights? Because I got to do something. Oh, yeah, sure. No big deal. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
just set it up. So Roch met him on September 11th, 1987. And although he could barely understand Roch with his French accent, he was like, well, this guy seems harmless, let him stay. So Roch tried showing off and talked about how much money he had. He even pulled down his pants in front of the wives. Do you remember his big penis?
Yes.
Okay.
I did remember that reoccurring theme through the episodes as I was listening.
He's got a big knob. So he pulled down his pants, pulled out this wallet from his leopard bikini underwear.
Gross.
And threw it on the desk to his wife, to one of Alex's wives, being like, "Here, keep this for me." It was in his ass. Gross. It's a bikini underwear. Where are you keeping it? You're keeping it underneath your scrotum. That is your ass. You can't just. But what?
Yeah.
I can't even. It was right there. Gross. He's like, "Here, keep this for me. There's $3,000 in there." Okay. Number one, pull down his pants to show off his huge penis, of course. And number two, who keeps a wallet in their butt? I don't know. Okay, so since Alex was so obviously successful at this polygamy thing, he makes Roch look really bad.
Right.
He actually, or Roch makes him look really good. I can't really decide. But anyway, he helped Roch become a part of his community by encouraging him to legitimately marry all of his wives. Like, legitimately. And he could help him do that. Legitimate for them, not legal. Yeah. Legitimately. He also encouraged him to design a flag, kind of like a flag for your clan, like your family seal, like
a crest,
like a crest. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, like a state flag.
Alex is like super legit over here.
Yeah. Yeah. And he said, okay, once you do all of these things, once you get your business in order, once this is a legitimate polygamist family in life, then you can become king. Yep.
I had so much hope for Alex.
He would anoint him as a king of his lawful land, of his realm.
Alex had so much promise.
So much. So much. But he's not Roch. He's not Roch. So Groesbeck ended up going to spend some time at the commune as well. And by this point, the clan had created their flag and it's there. Okay. But for Groesbeck, he was just fascinated by Roch, and he put on a good front, just like he does for everybody. So he didn't see the treachery. He just saw the happiness, and he told everybody he was going to write a book about Roch and his followers. Anyway, major bromance. Anyway, and so after he left, he wrote Roch a letter saying he wanted so much to join his little group of people and to live out in the wilderness and be rugged men together, right? That pesky wife of mine, am I right? So he decided, yeah, but I can't. I got a job. I got a wife. I got to stay here in Utah. But once the visitors were gone, Roch would start his drinking and his antics. I don't know if antics is the right word, but he would start all that up again. And it didn't take a lot. One of them said that it took him 4 or 5 beers. 4 or 5 beers.
That's so adorable.
That just makes me think that he didn't really need to be drunk.
Yeah.
He didn't need alcohol to do what he's doing. But 4 or 5 beers and you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's like that. You just need an excuse.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't do it without it. So one night, Roch got mad at Claude and told him that he had to wrap a rubber band around his testicles.
Jesus Christ.
And being obedient, Claude left it on overnight. In the morning, his testicles were the size of an orange and were blue and purple. Sorry, guys. we have a part to go through all this too. So,
oh my God. How was he in not like excruciating
a month
pain?
later, while peeing, he looked down and saw that one of them looked infected. And he said, "It felt dead. I have no concept."
Oh my God. I want to throw up so bad. I don't know what it means for it to look dead or seem dead. But Jesus Christ, I hope I never find out.
I have no concept. None. I have no idea what that must feel or look like at all. What is that?
Sounds like the motorcycle guy.
Oh God. Damn motorcycle guy. So he said, so Roch the surgeon appeared and says like, "I know, I'll fix it." And using a razor blade,
oh my God,
sliced Claude's testicles open and plucked out the infected testicles with his fingers. Then he cauterized the incision with a piece of hot iron.
Sarah, you're welcome to come back anytime, Sarah. You can be the new host. I'm out.
Bye. Afterward, I'll just tell the story without you here. Afterward, Roch picked up a welding torch and announced that he was going to look inside Claude's stomach. He was like, fuck that. So still bleeding, in pain, he gets up, runs into the forest, and hides until Roch sobers up. Meanwhile, Giselle still kept trying to run away. They all had, well, except Nicole, Chantal, and Francine. But they'd end up back at the commune and would be severely punished. It seemed to get worse every time. An example was in February of 1987 when Roch was drunk. He threw a knife across the room and it pierced Giselle's legs 3 inches deep. No one would take her to the hospital for fear of Roch's fury, for them helping her.
So at this time they're living on Alex's commune and
No.
Oh, okay.
They left. That was just a visit. That was just a visit.
Okay,
and
sorry.
Then, sorry, it should have been clear that they were just there visiting.
Okay.
Trying to play doctor again. Roch had Gabrielle pour boiling hot water into the wound, and he would try to use a hot iron to close the wound.
Just keep the button down.
In the summer of 1987, Roch and the Ant Hill kids started visiting family members, parents. These are all the parents that people had cut out. Remember,
they just randomly started visiting.
They just decided we're going to go because they needed food. Shit, they were hungry. They were poor and hungry, so they just started to show up. So first they visited the Solange's parents, the Boyards, or sure, I'm going to say that, and Francine Laflamme's parents, and then his own. But once back home, the violence continued. The roster of potential charges drawn up later by the police was a veritable litany of horrors. And I'm not going to use Kevin.
That's fine.
There was the time he fired up the torch, and while Gabrielle held Jose tight in her arms, passed the flame back and forth over Jose's back and shoulders, roasting the flesh until the skin bubbled up. There was the time he took the torch to Nicole's stomach on the day she gave birth to her first child, a son. There was the time he smacked Jacques in the forehead with the blunt edge of an axe and smashed his ribs with a wooden club. There was the time he punched Roch Jr. in the face after he refused to fight his brother Francois. There was the time he punched and kicked Nicole in the stomach when she was 3 months pregnant, causing her to abort. There was the time he fired a rifle through Nicole's right shoulder. There was a time he threw Giselle to the ground, kicked her in the head, and broke her ribs with steel-toed work boots. There was the time he held Claude's right foot in his hands and bent each of the toes backwards until it snapped. It just goes on for 2 more pages.
Holy fuck.
And it's just like that. One sentence after another sentence after another sentence. There's a time he slammed Solange on the floor when she was 6 months pregnant and broke her cheekbone with a fist. The catalog of violence in the police files went on and on and on. Whether each and every one of these atrocities in fact happened can never be proved because they never reached the courts. In the fall of 1988, Solange decided to leave the commune. This is kind of a shock for most of them because she was Roch's right hand and she hadn't done that before. But she didn't feel well. She had said she didn't feel well, and it had been going on for some time. And Roch made her believe it was because of her liver. He kept saying she was drinking a lot. Excuse me. And of course, he began drinking, and he had probably been hearing the scuttlebutt, that she was thinking of leaving. Maybe somebody told. Giselle was scared, so she fled to her parents' house, afraid of another surgery, because, he has terrorized them enough. Roch decided he needed surgery. Roch decided that Solange needed surgery for her stomach ailment. So she willingly got undressed.
Are you fucking serious?
Willingly got undressed and got onto the table in the kitchen. In the book, it's really something, but in the book, they use everybody's, Maurice Lambert, Jacques, Claude, Giselle, everybody gives their account of the story, and it's in quotes. So they actually don't they don't write the narrative. The people who are there write the narrative. And so they don't add or subtract. So, he started by putting his finger, the middle one, in her rectum and moving it in and out. He then tried to put the enema tube in. He was rough. He was not putting it in properly, and the excrement was coming out on the table. The enema fluid was molasses, water, and oil. He was putting the tube in and taking it out and telling her not to be embarrassed, to relieve herself. I would say he spent 20 to 30 minutes doing this. Everybody was scared and nervous. She looked like she was in great pain. Everybody was made to watch. That was Claude. He started in the bakery. The accused began pressing hard. This is agreed statement of facts from both his lawyers and the prosecution. In the bakery, the accused began pressing hard against Solange Boyard's stomach with his hands. He punched her hard in the stomach several times when she attempted to protect herself with her hands. He told her to take her hands away, which she did. Claude continues. A clear plastic tube about 1/4 inch in diameter was put into her stomach. I don't know if it went through the nose or the mouth. Everybody present was ordered to either blow or suck on this tube. He told us why we had to do it, but I don't remember. He told Solange that she must have an operation. He told her in a smooth way. Solange asked me to hold her hand, which I did. Suddenly, Roch, and this is Maurice, suddenly Roch had a knife and came close to Solange. Jacques says, after that, Roch made an incision of about 5 or 5.5 inches on the right side below the rib cage. So he starts to remove a piece of fat or something beige, which is a little longer and wider than a finger. I think that must have been her intestines.
Oh my God.
He tore the piece off, placed it on the counter beside the table. And he said, there, you're going to be all right. After all that. When he took out, what he took out looked like an intestine. It is white. He held it with his other hand and ripped a piece off, a piece of about 4 or 5 inches long. He handed the piece to someone to conserve it. He placed the other part back into the abdomen. She was conscious the whole time. She never uttered a word, like she accepted everything. Somebody sewed her up. I was taking all this time with Solange. She got up and was walking around and talking. Roch forced her to get up from the table to walk around. Everybody was frozen in place. She walked upstairs and lay down on her bed. That was from Gabrielle. She passed a night of suffering in the sleeping loft. Francine Laflamme and me, this is Gabrielle, we kept an eye on her the whole night, giving our hands to her all the time. She said, well, I never thought I would suffer this much in my life. Claude says, the next morning I went to see Solange. She told me that she didn't realize the body could endure so much pain. She was suffering. You could see that. She hadn't slept all night. In the opinion of Dr. Donald Curie, a medical expert, Solange Boyard's death was likely due to acute peritonitis caused by the leaking of digestive chemicals in the abdominal cavity, resulting in severe inflammation, a fatal condition if not treated.
Sorry.
So then they went to dig a grave and they put her in. Jacques called Giselle at home about a week later and told her the news. Roch then called her up and said, I need you back. She said, okay. So he came to Quebec to pick her up, and he chastised her the whole way back to the commune. And they ended up going, the two of them, to Utah. They took a train to Utah to see Dr. Grossbeck because he wanted to consult with him about Solange's death. And he told Grossbeck that he was his prophet. Like, you are my prophet. And you would tell me what to do. And so Grossbeck really took that, like, oh, wow, like he's looking to me and to be a spiritual guide, you know? And so he was like, you know, Roch was telling him about these dreams that he was having, like the one where he met God and God tells him that he once had a wife inside him too. And he's all right. Like, I know how that feels. And then he sees this tree. So he goes behind this tree and he masturbates, and the cum that comes out onto the ground then grows into Solange. It becomes Solange, this big cum version of Solange. And then he has sex with the cum version of Solange. So
is this a real story?
This is a real fucking story.
I feel like I'm on an episode of Pranked right now.
Because what?
What the fuck?
So he starts like, yeah. And then like, he felt like the story of Adam and Eve, where Eve came from the rib of Adam. And isn't that sort of similar? And then, so then Grossbeck was like, yeah, that kind of sounds like reverse birth.
What?
And so
the amount of people that just feed into this man's delusion is insane.
So then they go back to Grossbeck's house. He sees Solange. They go for a walk, and he tells Giselle that he's pregnant.
Okay.
And she laughs. Like, no. Yeah. No, Dr. Grossbeck said, this is a reverse birth. I am now pregnant. I have to watch what I eat and drink now because I'm pregnant. Wow. Do you see why, like, I had to tell, like, all of this? Because it has to all be put into some context here, people. Like, it was just, there's some context. So soon he went to go visit Alex Joseph. So he arrives and he goes, man, you know, I wasn't quite sure, but I thought I heard Roch say that he was pregnant with Solange, but he thought maybe it was something that was lost in translation. But Roch was there for Alex to marry Roch to Solange. And so he was like, I should have married her. You told me I was supposed to legitimately marry my wives. I should have married her. So I need to do all these things to become king. So, okay, I'm going to do that. So, in order to, Alex Joseph had said, you have to marry all of the wives before, you have to do all that. Even if they're dead, you have to marry them. Like, you can still do that in death. Right. And so, he had this whole theory as to why you could do that. So Giselle had asked Alex if he could make Roch a crown to help make him happy. This whole king thing, can you help me make a crown? And he's like, oh, I think I have one. That's like,
of course he does.
Like a costume one, Mm-hmm. So he's like, sure, here, you can take this. It was all real nice. It was ceremonial, but he didn't use it anymore. And so that just made Giselle so happy. And so he then married a Solange using Giselle saying the vows. So she was the stand-in. He renewed his vows to Giselle and then married Gabrielle Nadeau And if you remember that name, she's the 19-year-old MS patient who died in his care. Might as well marry her too. So just add to the mix. And then he married Gabrielle Lavallee, the nurse, who was recovering, and I'll tell you later, from one of his punishments back home. Let me just put that in there. Then, in an elaborate ceremony, Roch was made an elder apostle and king over his lawful realm. Yep. So Roch had confided in Alex that the Canadian government had taken his children away, and he worried about the baby Francine was carrying. So Alex, of course, says, well, if Francine comes here and has the baby, we'll keep it until things calm down in Canada. Roch didn't need to hear more. He was like, okay, let me go home and get the wife. All right. So on the way to the Amtrak station, Roch told Alex, this is a quote, the ultimate religious experience was for a man to eat one of his male offspring. At that point, Alex said, that baby is never going home with Roch. He was like, yep, no, not sending that baby back home. He'll never have that baby. So as soon as they returned to the compound, Roch began drinking and announcing he was pregnant to everybody.
Sorry. I know it's a very serious matter and I don't mean to laugh, but how fucking ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous. Okay. So, but poor Giselle, because she had just run away and he had to go to Quebec to get her, she was in for it. So Roch asked Nicole to scalp Giselle with a butcher knife, which she did because she never said no. Then Roch took a sharp blade and cut into the vein on top of her head. A few days later, he wanted Solange's body exhumed, that when they opened the casket, she looked like she was screaming. He then asked Gabrielle to remove parts of her body, her uterus and her kidneys, but she was only able to find one kidney. They were put in the jar and they reburied Solange. 4 days later, he was shooting his followers, throwing knives at them. He wanted them to bring Solange back up. He asked Jacques to drill a hole in her skull to do a lobotomy post-death, which is dumb. Then he masturbated into her brain in front of everybody.
Nice.
Then they reburied her.
Was there a reason that he masturbated into her skull?
Was there a reason for any of that?
I mean, I didn't know. I didn't know if he listed a reason or,
I don't know. He wanted to be on her brain. I don't know. So he goes 2 days without drinking and he then started back up again. This time Giselle spoke up for Solange and said that they should honor her wishes of being cremated, and he listened to reason. But first he asked everyone to take a part of her, a bone. Roch wanted a rib as a keepsake, and he took the most beautiful bones as a keepsake, put them in a jar with olive oil. He kept this jar in his little sanctuary where he apparently spoke with God, and he masturbated into the jar daily, with the idea that it would somehow bring her back to life. The man was delusional and insane. Like, I don't know if any of this actually had a reason, because I can't even imagine what it is. November of 1988, Roch and his very pregnant wife Francine, Giselle, Nicole, Chantal, and Maurice Lambert arrive in Bigwater, Utah to see Alex, Joseph, and his wives because Francine was ready to give birth any day now. I can't believe they traveled with her that pregnant. It wasn't a fun visit for Giselle. She obviously was the only one that could communicate with the wives, because she spoke passable English, but the others couldn't. So they all just kind of hid in the bedroom to themselves, except for meals. To Alex, though, it seemed that Roch had brought all of their belongings with them on this trip, and that bugged him out. And so Roch went into his sob story, but he was barking up the wrong tree. If the Canadian government had told him he needs to show up in court or if he's in trouble, he was going to get no help from Alex. He was he was a former policeman. All of that. He was like, you are in no way allowed to stay in Bigwater as a fugitive.
Good for Alex.
He understood you have to face the music. You can't run forever.
Yeah.
You just can't. But then his thoughts went to the baby. If Roch did leave behind this baby, he had a couple of wives who could take him. But one of them, Joanna, had not been able to get pregnant in 15 years of being married to Alex. And so she was 100% down to be the adopted mom. So one night, Roch starts saying, Alex, you have to have heart surgery. You are going to die. You have a terminal heart problem. And if you don't let me operate, I can't promise you'll make it through the night. And Alex is like, yeah, no, no. He's like, okay, well, you need the super special treatment, very expensive, very, very exclusive heart therapy. It was basically just a massage. And Alex loved it. He even said he'd hire him weekly to do it. Like he was that good, right? But he even coughed up like all of this brown stuff after the massage. And like 2 days later, Joanna got pregnant. And so they were like, oh, baby, that helped. But bye. I don't know. And then on November 22nd, 1988, Francine went into labor and Roch, not surprisingly, acted like a maniac. He went running through their little area, holding the baby in the air, screaming that the baby was born like a crazy person. He went into Alex's room, wagging the newborn all around, getting blood and fluids all over the bed. And Alex was like, Jesus, man, you had 22 of these. Do you need to act like this? Like, God damn. So around this time, a film crew from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, arrived to do a documentary on polygamy, and they were there. And then he was like, oh, this is great. You can meet this other family, Roch and his merry band of followers, right? And they're like, yeah, he has a really bad reputation. You may not want to put him in the frame with you. Like, it'll really ruin your story. So it was around Thanksgiving time, so they made him sit like at a different table than with Alex and his family, because they were like, you don't want to put that guy on screen. Like, that's not good. The Alex and his wives felt horrible about that because they felt like it was inhospitable, but they didn't know. They didn't know at this point.
Yeah.
They didn't know. CBC didn't divulge anything. They certainly didn't know. They just hadn't seen that yet.
Yeah.
The next morning, Roch began explaining to his land holding issues in Canada to Elizabeth, the lawyer of the wives. She couldn't follow because he was going into like, I come from royalty kind of shit. And so he started then talking about Solange and about all they did to Solange. And he told her detail of all they did, all the exhumations, the masturbating, the pulling out of her ribs and her body parts, everything they did to Solange. And she's sitting there horrified because he's saying it without embarrassment. Matter of fact, this is what I did. And she was like, honey, they got to go. And he was like, what's happening? But that afternoon, Roch began to drink. And once he starts drinking, it only takes 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much. Shit got really bad real fast. So Roch began showing off, trying to entertain the room because he had all of the wives as an audience, and he just thinks he's so funny and witty. And then he starts in on all of them. So he offered to remove the tooth of Diana, one of Alex's wives. And by the time they found her, she was so sick from drinking some alcoholic concoction that he made, that she had to be carried to her room. Like, she just was so sick. So then he goes into Alex's office and he starts holding court there, and Alex came in. And so then Roch challenged him to like a macho contest. Like, let me see how big your penis is, basically. And Alex was like, no, man. And he was like, took his pants off, like, look at my magic wand. He said magic wand.
That's a direct quote.
It's a quote.
Wow.
You just bought a magic wand, didn't you?
I did, but I have to say it was probably more impressive.
He was pretty big. Then he told Giselle, who had been wearing a head wrap because of her injury, that she should take off her head wrap. Like, show him your head. And she was like, no. And she's telling him, no. Then when Alex saw it, he asked what had happened. Like, it looked like she'd been in some accident, but he could tell by whatever she said to Roch in French that it wasn't an accident. And so he was like, what the fuck? So then Roch says, show the scars on your leg, in your tummy. And she was like, stop it. And she's crying and she calls him cruel. At that, Roch punched her in the face. And with that,
I feel like this is just never ending.
He says,
like, this shit gets wilder.
See, Alex, if you want to learn how to teach them, stick with me. Alex didn't laugh. He picked up Roch by his fucking balls, picked him up, and threw him across the room into a chair.
Damn.
And scared Roch. And he cowered in that chair. He said, don't move. We don't treat women that way around my place. Alex later said that he could tell that he had hurt Roch, like physically, and that Roch looked really scared. He looked like a coward in that chair. So Giselle ran at this point. She ran into the desert and slept out there. She was like, oh my God, he's going to come for me. And she spent the night in the desert. The next morning she crept back in and the wives kept her inside. They locked the doors, kept Roch outside, and he just kept drinking. And he told, the next day he sobered up. Alex sat him down one last time and said, you have to live up to your Christian obligations to this family. But Roch was so pissed off. He like looked at him and said, you have a malignancy in your intestines and you'll die in 3 days. So childish, just so childish. With that, they were on their way and Francine's baby stayed behind. Once they got back to Canada, Giselle bounced back and forth between the compound and her parents' home. Maurice also left a few times, but this just made things worse for everybody. One of the worst examples was in 1986. Gabrielle, who worked outside all day, every day, began experiencing a lot of pain in her lady bits. And her strenuous schedule made things worse. And she realized that she had a prolapsed uterus.
Oh my God.
By the way, the 4 categories of a uterine prolapse are: stage 1, the uterus is in the upper half of the vagina. Stage 2, the uterus has descended nearly to the opening of the vagina. Stage 3, the uterus protrudes out of the vagina. And stage 4, the uterus is completely out of the vagina. For Gabrielle, her uterus was 3 inches outside of her vagina. And Roch still made her work. Roch, thinking himself a doctor, refused to let her see a real one. He tried punching it back up in there.
Punching it back in there?
He fashioned a cone-shaped wooden contraption, think like a reverse strap-on, to stick up there and keep it in place while she worked. She, of course, took that off. He tried to even like tie a string around it and try to yank it out like it was like a loose tooth. Obviously making it worse. So she ran to a neighbor's house called the Dudmans. The Dudmans never called the police. They got her to a woman's shelter. She talked about going to the hospital, but it would be a year before she saw a doctor. Finally, one of Roch's trips to Utah, she did check herself into the hospital, and that was on this trip when he married. So she went to the hospital. They performed a partial hysterectomy, and she was able to heal a little bit. After Solange's death, Gabrielle made the mistake of complaining about a toothache.
Oh my Jesus. I would never complain about anything ever.
He pulled out all the he just pulled out like almost all of the teeth in her lower jaw, kind of ignoring the one that was in pain. Then he was like, you know what? I'm going to do more things. So he grabs a knife and she tries to protect herself. The knife cut. She grabbed the knife to protect herself and it cut through 2 tendons. They put her arm in a cast. She had showed up at a women's shelter 2 days later. They took her to the hospital for surgery. They put her arm in a cast. She ended up back with Roch. He removed all the wires that they had put in, but remarkably, her hand healed. I'm not sure how, but it did. In mid-March 1989, 6 months after Solange's death, it still had not been reported to the authorities. Her family had no idea what had happened to her. A rumor had been going around that another baby had been born on the commune, Francine's, but they didn't see the baby. So the Children's Aid Society showed back up at the commune. They found no newborn because it was in Utah, but they also noticed that there was no Solange either. So when they asked, he was like, "Oh, she's at a safe house having a baby. If you need more information, contact my lawyer." In the spring and summer of 1989, commune members left and came back. José, however, ended up leaving for good. Yes. So aside from her, Solange, Maurice, and Jacques Fissette, the rest were still there. In July, Roch began talking about his surgical skills again. So Giselle snuck out with Claude, Maurice, and Francine right behind her, and Gabrielle was the only one left. So Roch focused on her. He took a hunting knife and stabbed her hand through the back of it, pinning it to the table, wooden table. He said, "You're not going to run tonight, eh?" And she said, "I guess not." She was standing up. She never sat down. She never sat down. He went, sat down, fell asleep for 45 minutes in a chair, drinking his beer. And the blood is, she's losing blood, and she stays standing. She stays awake. She's fucking machine. He said, well, look at this. It's not looking good, is it? He then took a curved carpet knife and jabbed it in her arm between her shoulder and her elbow and began taking chunks out in a circle around her arm, leaving the bone exposed. And then took a dull cleaver and amputated her arm. She never screamed once. And she stayed on the floor while he slept on the couch.
I would have passed out.
I don't know how she didn't. I don't know how she did it. She was like, if I fell asleep, if I had passed out, something worse would have happened. And she just stood there and sort of like in her defiance. By August, Roch didn't feel like she was healing well. So he said he had to chop the remaining part off. Hit her in the head with the blunt end of an axe. She ran into the wilderness and slept for 2 days outside. On August 11th, she had a swarm of insect eggs in her scalp. She went back to the compound. I don't know how this woman's alive. It took some days, but on August 16th, she finally left for good, and she went to the hospital. She tried lying about her injuries, saying it was a car accident, whatever.
I mean, come on.
And they were like, even if it was all that you said, no one is allowed to perform surgeries on somebody without being a doctor. And so they arrested him for that. They arrested everybody for that.
That's what he got arrested for.
Yes. And so August 19th, they went to the commune only to find it empty because some had run into nearby town for errands and some had left, right? So Claude and Giselle finally found it in themselves to cut ties permanently. Like that's when they fucking finally left.
Yeah.
Yes. So 6 weeks passed before they finally apprehended Roch. The remaining members helped him hide in the woods, making a very small makeshift cabin for all of them to live in. It was so well hidden. He was 10 meters away before he could even notice it, the cops that found it. And they did. Damn. I know. I mean, they could live off the land, right? October 5th, they captured the remaining members and Roch. They told him not to move. This is the part that made Sarah laugh. They told him not to move and to remove his belt because he had a knife in there. He says, "Okay, but if my pants fall down when I take the belt off, you'll see that my eyes aren't the best part of me."
Jesus Christ. I do remember this.
Ew, because she was like, "I'm going to use that one."
God,
or no, don't tell Justin.
Yeah, this guy is crazy.
So surprisingly, they all pled guilty to what happened to Gabrielle. They all pled guilty. They were like, well, if I pled not guilty, there'd be this whole thing. Then the taxpayers would end up having to pay for this. And I'm saving John Q taxpayer.
Oh, how thoughtful.
Oh, yeah. But on October 6th, Giselle finally mustered up over a bottle of wine with the investigator the courage to tell authorities about Solange. So this made the case against Roch so much bigger. On October 15th, authorities went to confront Roch in jail about his rib necklace. He took a rib and he made a fucking necklace. He tried to sew it onto himself, but it got infected.
Fuck.
So he just made it a necklace.
I can't imagine being that insane. Like, literally that mentally
delusional.
Insane and delusional. I just can't I just can't wrap my
megalomaniac
head around how people out there live like this. Like, truly believe their shit and convince others of their shit.
Did he really believe his shit?
I think he did. I mean, come on.
I don't know. Maybe he did. I don't know.
Either
But
way,
he turned it off and on. I don't know.
I just can't imagine being that level of crazy and living like that. Like, in that state of mind.
Just constantly. He turned it on and off. So I don't know that he believed it.
I feel like that makes you almost crazier that you can control it.
Yeah.
Like, fuck.
That's, yeah. So they confronted him about the rib necklace and he was like, yeah, that's my wife. I wanted her with me all the time. And they're like, well, he's like, can you please take me to go see it? I want to kiss it one last time. They let him.
Fuck.
Canadians are so nice.
I don't know how many times I've said what the fuck this episode, but what the fuck.
His lawyer, discovering the amount of evidence against Roch that existed, opted for a plea deal. His client would plead guilty to second-degree murder on the commitment that no further charges would be pressed and some evidence wouldn't go public or be given to journalists. They accepted the plea deal. That's a shitty plea deal.
So I wonder what wasn't released. Oh, shit.
Well, I mean, all the stuff that was said by the members. None of that went to court.
Okay,
yeah,
you just meant not said in court.
Yeah, it wasn't said in court. It baffles me, but Roch received life with no parole for 10 years. Fucking unbelievable. So Jacques Guerre was sentenced to 5 years, but released on parole in 1991, serving 22 months. During his first year in prison, he remained loyal, even cleaning Roch's toilet and making sandwiches for him. Slowly, he started thinking for himself and abandoned his belief in God altogether. He got really into learning about science. And that just changed his mind, I guess. At the time the book was published in 1993, he had a girlfriend and was trying to work on a friendship with his ex-wife, Maurice, who was raising their children. I just can't imagine that can be easy. Maurice Lambert went to school and became a secretary for an engineering firm in Quebec. She won custody of her youngest child in 1991 and lived in Montreal with her new boyfriend. This is all in 1993. These were the updates as of then. Josée Pelletier was pregnant when she left the commune in 1989, and she and her son are living in Drummondville, Quebec. Claude Houillet finds it painful to think of his marriage to Solange. The family that adopted his son that he had with her, Simon, would bring Simon to visit Claude and to spend time with him in Montreal. So they wanted him to be able to still have his dad. Gabrielle Lavallee lived in Toronto. She's the only one to have come forward and have been in a documentary about the Anthill kids. The family that had adopted her 10-year-old daughter allows Gabrielle to see her. She wrote a book in French about her experience.
I cannot believe she survived.
That
is amazing.
I can't believe it either. And she just says it like matter of fact, like what happened to Solange, she was like, it was impressive that she never cried. She didn't scream when she was being disemboweled. And I don't know if that was part of it. Like,
yeah,
damn. Giselle Tremblay, the beginning woman that we even learned about, she was living a pretty quiet and solitary life in southern Ontario. She bought a gun like immediately after leaving. Kept it by her bed. She was afraid that Roch would come and get her because of her telling the police about Solange. At the time of the book printing, she was actually friends with her mom and dad. And that's
Yeah.
That's a
huge.
change. That's huge. And she would see them. They were in their 70s at that time, and she would see them throughout the year. She has tried to contact her son, but at the time, the adoptive parents had refused. Francine Laflamme, Nicole Ruel, Chantal Labrie remained loyal to Roch and actually moved to be near the prison to see him. They opened a bakery to support themselves, but once people found out who they were, it closed down. As for Roch, he was on his best behavior while in prison, hoping for an early release. Psychologists would see him and say he was not a danger to society any longer, which is bullshit. But he was eligible for parole in around 1999. But in 2000, he was transferred to Dorchester Penitentiary, a medium security prison in New Brunswick. In 2002, he was rejected for parole as he was considered too high a risk to reoffend. And he never applied again. Because in 2009, he tried to sell his artwork on murderauction.com, and they were like, fuck that. No, you don't get to do that because you can't be benefiting from your crime while in prison. So they were like, no. So he was just not doing himself any favors. And on February 26, 2011, at age 63, Roch was found dead near his cell at Dorchester Penitentiary. His death is believed to be the result of an altercation with his cellmate, Matthew Gerard McDonald, a 60-year-old convicted murderer. McDonald stabbed Roch in the neck with a shiv, walked to the guard station, handed them the weapon, and proclaimed, "That piece of shit is down on the range. Here's the knife. I've sliced him up." And that, my friends, is the end of the fucking story.
Woo! That's man, he's a hero. Did they release him from prison for doing that?
Like, he got another sentence of life in prison for that one.
Out. Just excuse whatever the first murder was.
But isn't that like, he was probably like, shut the fuck up.
I know. Oh, man. Oh, God. I should have stayed gone another week.
You should have stayed gone another week. Just to make, Sarah was like, please don't make me. Like, I can't sit there, because her face throughout all of this has just been like just shock and fear. I know it was a lot. It is. I left so much out. Believe me, people, I left so much out. I did, and I was like, oh, I gotta cut that. I gotta cut that. But there's only so many horrid things that you can hear, but it had to be put in place so that you just knew this is one of the worst human beings I think we've ever covered. I really think he just tops it, because it never would end. If he had not died, it would never have ended, because he was still in control of those 3 women. Yeah. And still getting them pregnant.
Okay, well, my next story is going to be about paranormals and aliens and nothing to do with this shenanigans. It's more about the Alaska Triangle, because I just cannot process what happened. I still don't believe that's a real story. I think it's...
Yeah, you didn't get to see any of the pictures or anything. There's Solange's rib as a necklace. God,
I hate that I missed all of that.
There's that knife that he cut out Gabrielle's arm with. Yep.
Wonderful.
Yep. Aren't you so excited?
Super.
This is the proclamation that he was king right here. That's signed by Alex Joseph. Yep. And there's Dr. Grossbeck.
I too have a piece of land.
In Scotland?
Yes.
Me too.
I know.
I'm a lady. We're Lord and Lady Clemens.
I'm Lady Holmes. Anywho, my story will not be anything like that. It's
this was an atrocious story. Sorry.
I don't know what else to say about it, but please come back. Your children can listen to my stories regardless of what Kat and Sarah think. It'll be great. It'll be fine. It's about the Alaska Triangle.
Yeah. I can't wait.
Unless you live in Alaska, then maybe don't listen. But otherwise, you probably already know it if you're in Alaska.
If you're in Alaska, you probably do. So. Yeah, I asked my father-in-law if he knew where it was. He was like, "No, never heard of it." And I'm like, "You probably fly through it." So it's like, I'll pull it up.
Yeah, so I don't know what else to say to that. I don't know how to end this episode.
Okay, well, if you're still
glad to be back.
Are you?
It's debatable.
Well, if you're still listening, thank you. Thank you for tolerating this crazy story I did not think would take 3 episodes to tell. I was trying to really speed it up there at the end. But thank you. We come back week after week because of you guys. So thank you for listening. Don't be like Roch. That's all I gotta say. Don't be like Roch. Let's just get through the week.
Yes.
Let's just get through the week.
Shit.
I need like a shower.
My birthday's also this month. So if you guys want to send presents, feel free.
Yeah. You know what? We just passed my birthday month. I never asked people to send me presents.
I'm asking. I am a lady.
She is. You're also not. You
can send 40. Belated presents to Kat as well.
No. All right, everybody. I hope you all had a wonderful Halloween.
Yes.
We're now in
November.
Well, holiday season. No, yeah, we skipped Thanksgiving.
My birthday. Did you not hear my announcement?
Yeah,
it's my season.
It's your season. It's Ashley's. Welcome
totally
to Ashley's season. Okay, well, we'll see you next week. Until then, be kind to everybody, please. Bye.
Bye.